play from the beginning.
Backs out of it, and Verstappen roars around the outside to take the lead.
He's doing it again, he's going for it again, Max Verstappen, and he's got a quarter of a car length in front. Max Verstappen started 14th, is now up into 6th place. He is now up into the podium places, winning the Belgian Grand Prix. And in Hungary, good, Max Verstappen wins the Austrian Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen wins the Miami Grand Prix. Max Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix. Verstappen wins the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix.
I mean, honestly, like, it's a tough one. I would say, of course, the current regulations are not helping the longevity of my career in Formula 1. Let's say it like that.
Pick up a towel, a tissue, or Isak Hadjar's napkin and dry those eyes because we need to have an honest conversation about Max Verstappen. I know it's a bit too early, but 3 races into the season, Max Verstappen is 60 points away from the top, struggling to get into rhythm and having an affair in the standings down there like Liam Lawson. But that wouldn't be a problem if Max wasn't going around giving interviews that indicate he's losing interest in F1.
Not pure Formula 1, like Formula E on steroids.
I mean, this is the most we've seen Max nag in a season, and it's just 3 races in.
Who cares? Like, trying to go 24 times a year around the world.
Trying to hunt for another title.
Every time he shows up to a new interview, we see a man whose wife has divorced him and is absolutely dejected. All of this begs the question, is this the end of Max Verstappen? Going into 2026, the mood at Red Bull should have been nervous, right? New engine they built themselves in partnership with Ford, going up against Mercedes and Ferrari, who have been making engines since before some of these drivers were born. Everyone expected Red Bull to come to testing and be slow, embarrassing, maybe fighting for midfield scraps while Mercedes ran away with everything. Then testing starts in Bahrain and Red Bull was really fast. Their new engine was apparently doing so much more on the straights than everyone else that Toto Wolff, the Mercedes boss, the man who gets paid to make Red Bull look bad, actually called them the benchmark. Max is doing 130 plus laps, the most of anyone in the whole field on day 1. But right from day 1, he has taken every opportunity to shit on the new rules. But from testing, people thought Red Bull was going to be fine. Max is going to be fine. The natural order of things will be restored. And then Max, in the same breath as calling the engine impressive, describes the actual cars as Formula E cars on steroids. Here's the thing about these 2026 cars that you need to understand if you want to make sense of everything that has happened this season. The new rules basically made the engineering side of things massively more important than before. You have to manage when you use your battery, when you charge it, when you deploy it, even when you crash. Maybe not that one. But the cars behave differently depending on all of that. Max spent years, literal years, mastering the art of attacking every single corner, pushing the car to the absolute limit. The guy pushes his car to the max. No pun intended. And now the sport has come to him and said, actually Max, you need to slow down in the corner so you can charge the battery so you can go faster on the straights. That's like telling Usain Bolt to walk the first 50 meters of the 100 so he can sprint harder at the end. By the way, these new cars are so difficult to get right that by next year, it will not just be Max Verstappen looking like a rookie. The whole grid is going to look like rookies. Every single driver on the starting grid is basically learning to drive again from scratch because the cars demand something completely different from what they trained their whole lives to do. Drivers put in years of work, sacrifice everything, climb through karting and Formula 2 and Formula 3, develop every skill imaginable, and the reward for all of that is getting handed one of these shit boxes and being told good luck figuring it out. Welcome to the new era, everybody. Anyway, Australia, round 1. The first race of the new era and the perfect opportunity for Max to silence all the doubters. Because as the saying goes, give Max a tractor and he's finishing P1. That was the plan. What actually happened was Max joining a qualifying season, going out on his very first flying lap, hitting the brakes at turn 1, and the rear axle of his car just completely locking up and sending him spinning through the gravel and into the wall. First qualifying day of the new season, and Max was already out of it. You have to appreciate the sarcasm. Now while Max was having his sweet little date with the wall, you want to know what his brand new rookie teammate Isak Hadjar was doing? Qualifying 3rd. On his very first qualifying season as a Red Bull driver, a 21-year-old kid who has never driven for the main team before goes out and puts his car 3rd on the grid behind only the 2 Mercedes. The rookie out-qualified the 4-time world champion by 19 positions. To be fair, the crash was a car problem, not a driver problem. Even Sky Sports commentator Martin Brundle said immediately that is not a driver error, but the optics were not great regardless. So Max starts 20th on Sunday and picks people off and recovers all the way to 6th place. And look, from 20th to 6th is actually an impressive drive. If literally any other driver did that, we would be calling it the performance of the race. But this is Max Verstappen, and the podium is the standard. 6th place means he finishes behind both Mercedes, both Ferraris, and Lando Norris, the reigning world champion. 8 points and a long flight to Shanghai. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, Hadjar retires with a reliability issue, and luckily this time he didn't flood the entire grid. So Max leads the teammate battle in the standings, 8 points to 0. China is next, and this is where things go from bad to Lance Stroll. Sprint weekend provided more sessions, more opportunities for Red Bull to either show improvement or continue their new hobby of collecting pain. Qualifying for the sprint, Max goes P8, almost a full second off the pace of Kimi Antonelli, who is 19 years old and in his second full Formula 1 season. Max manages to get up to 9th, but at one point, he's on the radio saying he is losing pace to the midfield cars, the same cars that are supposed to be nowhere near him. He describes it as a disaster on the radio, and honestly, that's probably underselling it slightly. Main race qualifying, still P8, the deficit not really improving. And then in the race on Sunday, Max is running 6th. Not great, but at least he is scoring points. And then on lap 45, the car just dies. He pulls into the pits, parks the car, and walks away from Shanghai with literally 0 points for the weekend. At this point, Max Verstappen's relationship with the 2026 regulations is basically the same energy as Ben with the rulebook, always finding new and creative ways to make the sport more confusing. Things weren't much different for Hadjar, who spins on the very first lap of the main race at turn 13. Down the order he goes, anyone else, and that is the race ruined. He recovers to finish 8th, scores 4 points, and suddenly the rookie who was on 0 points after Australia is now on 4 points, while the 4-time champion is still on 8 after 2 whole race weekends. It's either Hadjar is ridiculously good, or Max's tractor is very, very bad. Because we all know Red Bull is a one-driver team, Max Verstappen, and this is the first time the gap between both drivers has been this close. But hold your breath, because next up is Japan. Suzuka. Just a little important context. Max Verstappen at Suzuka is historically not a normal human being. He has not lost a Suzuka pole position since 2019. He won there in 2023, he won there in 2024. I think if Max is going to leave F1, the next step is to head to Japan and become a full-fledged ninja because this is his temple. The circuit is basically named after him at this point in terms of recent history. So when qualifying comes around and Max Verstappen cannot make Q3, when he gets knocked out in Q2 and ends up 11th, while his teammate Isak Hadjar makes it through to Q3 and qualifies 8th, that is not just a bad qualifying session, guys. The streak is gone. The fortress has fallen, and it wasn't even close. Hadjar was in Q3 and Max was watching the session from the garage like Daniel Ricciardo watches F1 now. The race itself is a perfect summary of where Red Bull is right now. Max starts 11th, makes a decent start, gets into the mix, and then spends what feels like the entire race admiring Pierre Gasly's ass in an Alpine. Now, no disrespect to Pierre Gasly. He's a very good driver, solid career, multiple point finishes, a race winner. But Alpine is not supposed to be ahead of Red Bull. Alpine is a midfield team. Max, in a competitive Red Bull, should be hunting down the baddies in Mercedes, not spending his Sunday afternoon admiring Gasly's ass. He finishes 8th, behind Gasly, after all of that. And the result puts him 9th in the Drivers' Championship, below Ollie Behrman, below Pierre Gasly. If the F1 season ended today, Max Verstappen wouldn't be in the top 8. If you told me that before the season started, I'd have told you Ferrari was going to win the Constructors' Championship in return, since we're both apparently just making things up. At this rate, we're just going to have a 3-hour compilation video by the end of the season of just Max Verstappen moments, crashes, retirements, radio rants, name it, it's not a vibe. Before we get into more suffering, let's just take a second to appreciate what Red Bull and Max Verstappen have been doing to this sport for the past few years. Of course, you would appreciate it if you love watching one man dominate 19 men every Sunday. But going way back to 2021, Max vs Hamilton was the most dramatic Formula 1 season in the history of the sport, Abu Dhabi. If you're a strong F1 fan, you probably remember that moment and the exact place you were sitting. Well, I was sat in the toilet taking a fat dump. Abu Dhabi, the last lap. The world was going crazy. Max wins his first title and Red Bull is back on top. Then 2022 comes around, brand new technical regulations, and you know what everyone was saying? They were saying Red Bull was going to struggle. New rules always shake things up, right? Maybe Ferrari finally gets their moment. Maybe Mercedes bounces back. What does Red Bull do? They win the Constructors' Championship and Max takes his second title. Then 2023 happens, and honestly at that point, it stopped being a competition and started being a nature documentary about a predator that has no natural enemies. 21 wins out of 22 races. Max won so much that winning stopped feeling special. People were literally complaining that Formula 1 was boring because one guy was too good. You have the greatest driver on the planet at the peak of his powers and people are bored. And through all of this, Red Bull kept finding ways to stay on top even when things were getting messy internally. Christian Horner situation. Adrian Newey, the greatest car designer in Formula 1 F1 history, decided to pack his bags and leave. The whole palace was starting to crumble, and somehow Max just kept winning anyway. And that's probably how we found ourselves on this mess. Isak Hadjar, on the other hand, deserves a bit of praise for his season so far though. He came up through the Red Bull Junior program and spent 2025 at Racing Bulls. Last year he was consistently getting into Q3. He took a podium at the Dutch Grand Prix, and he finished the season ahead of his teammate Liam Bodelson in the standings. Good enough to earn the promotion to the main team, snatching Yuki Tsunoda's chain. Now, in terms of expectations, the general understanding was that Hadjar would show promise, maybe push Max occasionally, learn from the 4-time world champion, and develop over the season. That was the expectation. What is actually happening is that Hadjar has outqualified Max in 2 of 3 races so far. He's called the car undrivable at times, revealed it even felt dangerous at Suzuka, and yet he's keeping up. The previous Red Bull number 2 drivers were nothing to write home about at this stage. Sergio Perez was never really threatening Max in qualifying. Liam Lawson came and went. Hadjar is genuinely in the conversation, and that matters because it adds another layer to the whole situation. Is the car just terrible for everyone? Yes, clearly. Is Max struggling more than he should, even accounting for the car? That is the question that nobody at Red Bull wants to answer out loud. Racing Bulls, the team that is supposed to be slower than Red Bull, running a similar but theoretically inferior package. Through 3 races, Liam Lawson has been scoring points, Arvid Lindblad scored points on his debut in Australia, and the gap between Racing Bulls and the main Red Bull team is genuinely embarrassing. At some circuits, Racing Bulls has looked more comfortable, more consistent, less like they're fighting the car just to survive a lap. Imagine being the senior team and your development squad, your academy, your junior operation that is supposed to be learning from you is keeping pace with you at your own house, with your own engine. In the middle of all this Formula 1 misery between the Chinese Grand Prix and the Japanese Grand Prix, Max did something that tells you everything you need to know about where his head is right now. He went to Nürburgring, not for a Red Bull event, to race a Mercedes GT3 car in a 4-hour endurance race at the most dangerous and terrifying racetrack in the world, the Nordschleife. 25 kilometers of unforgiving tarmac through the forests of Germany. A track where even the best drivers in the world crumble. Max went there in only his second official race at the circuit and qualified 2 seconds faster than everyone else. The man cannot make Q3 at Suzuka in an F1 car, but he goes to the Nordschleife in a GT3 and immediately makes every other driver look like Lance Stroll. And after the race, Max looked the happiest he'd been since the 2026 season began. Racing in GT3 was clearly giving him something that F1 currently is not. The whole thing ended in typical 2026 Verstappen fashion, by the way. His team got disqualified after the race because they used 7 sets of tires instead of the maximum 6. A tire mix-up by the garage cost them a dominant victory. Even outside of Formula 1, the universe is conspiring against Max Verstappen this year, but he's preparing for the Nürburgring 24 hours in May, which has apparently been on his bucket list forever, and honestly at this point we should just let him have it. The bigger picture at Red Bull is not pretty. Their pace deficit compared to Mercedes is the worst it has been in 11 years. Their own team principal admitted the gap to the leaders is growing rather than shrinking across the first 3 rounds. And then there's the Giampiero Lambiase situation. Lambiase is Max's race engineer, the voice in his ear for every single one of those 4 world championships, arguably the most important relationship or marriage in the entire paddock for the past several years, and reports suggest he will eventually move to McLaren. After 3 races, Max Verstappen has 12 points. He is 9th in the Drivers' Championship. His rookie teammate, who everyone expected to spend the year learning at his feet, has out-qualified him twice and is showing 0 signs of being overwhelmed. His team admits they're in a bad place. The car is arguably the most difficult on the grid to drive. Is this the end? Probably not. Max Verstappen has been counted out before and made people look stupid for it. Red Bull has been written off before and found another gear. The season is long, there's a break coming, Miami's around the corner, and if anyone can drag a bad car to a result is the man who spent 2024 single-handedly keeping a crumbling team competitive. But this feels different. The tools he relied on, the instincts he built, the style he perfected. All of it is working against him in a car that wants him to drive in a way that is fundamentally not who he is as a driver. And until Red Bull solves that at a mechanical level, there is very little Max can do except get on the radio and deliver another devastatingly dry piece of sarcasm. One thing is for sure though, if you're a George Russell fan right now, the meme has become uncomfortably real. Everyone laughed when people said Russell could win the championship in 2026. Nobody is laughing now.